What is Q552 base? It's the Canadian Area 51. Did you know that? Did you know James Rink and James Casbolt and um, Max Spears and Holly Baglio were trained there? Did you know that? We're going to listen today to a woman, a great woman. I've seen her out there for years, and today she's finally on my show, and I'm so pleased to have her. She goes by the name of, well, I'll let her introduce herself, but I want to start by saying, welcome, White Bear, Clan Mother. How are you?
I am so excited, Danny. You have no idea. I've been watching you for years. We've been in a few Zoom rooms, like on other ends of the quarter of the screen, but this is the first time we've got to really talk. And I just love what you're doing. I mean, if I may thank you,
Ah,
I've watched what you're doing with Reamer Fulmick because I'm very much
mm,
into the holistic and quantum medicine. So, also as a clan mother, international, tribal, and original treaty laws that predate the flood. This is galactic. And so
mm,
those cosmic, energies that we have, that's what's been filtered down to us. So I
mm.
really wanted to thank you because it takes a lot of courage, valor, and determination to stand up. And that's what we really need right now is women. Our sisters have got to get our stars
Yeah,
back together and,
definitely.
put, so I wanted to thank you for your help and
Well,
your understanding to
thank
start
you.
with.
Thank you very much, Karen. But this is about you today. But I thank you and I receive. Thank you so much. You also go by, so tell us your other name, Karen Ann, the full
Okay,
name.
so technically, my parents called me Karen Ann. That's the easy part. And then Lucyk is our Tartarian, as you think, Russian. Anastasia ringing cedars of Russia. So Lucyk actually has its own tartan and coat of arms. And that would be the matrilineal part of me on my mother's side. So the mitochondrial DNA. Very, very important because women, especially, have lost their connections to the mother, to the mother, to the mother because we've been switched into this patriarchal system. And we need to bring back a balanced system. And so the macdonald is self explanatory. That's from my patriarchal side. So, and that's got another set of tartans and stuff too. But yes, Karen Ann, and you can see how they're doing all the Karen things now, but it means pure and full of grace. And
Yeah.
so, actually, as a clan mother, that's why I usually go by Karen Ann instead of Karen now.
Yeah.
But is that it? I'm
It
pure and
is
full of
funny.
grace.
I'm sorry. I've got people I adore called Karen, and it's unfortunate that it's that name. But sometimes it is funny when someone's being a Karen. You're like, "Oh, sit down, Karen." But it's good that you've got the Karen Ann on the end too, just to kind of negate that. But yeah, carry on.
That's what they started with, and it's by design that it was done. I remember when I was doing Project Ascension in 2016, and that was one of the first disclosures as well, like Project Camelot. And we had a lot of esoteric, we had like live camera feeds and all sorts of stuff we were doing with Sergeant Broussard and Sergeant Daniel Brad McBullen. And so I was doing a lot of radio and TV at the time, and of course the basis projects. I think I have like a dozen at least at Miles Johnson's The Basis Project going back to number 47. So,
Really? All right. So let's
oh
slow
yeah,
down. Let's just put that out there. So you've been working in the field of disclosure and
for sure.
healing since 2016 with Kerry Cassidy, with Miles Johnston from Bases Project. Okay. And
Correct.
there's other two men that you mentioned. Okay, good. Let's just anchor in your pedigree, nice and slow, so people, can appreciate the body of work that you have.
Right.
Continue.
Yeah, and so I was really getting into what's going on. My parents, I'll just say, I'll give you a little bit of background. My parents delivered me into Kamloops, which people know, we call it the Secwepemc territory, but most people know it as the de facto corporation of British Columbia. And that was very, very important because that's where allegedly Queen Elizabeth had a hunting party and a bunch of children in these schools disappeared. So that's where I basically arrived. And then I was taken back to Saskatoon and right by the University of Saskatchewan, and very, very important because my grandfather and my mother's side, they were all military and army. And they were approached by the forces because of their decoding and their whole linguistics. They were linguistic, people that could decode in many languages. English, German, Austrian, also going into some other different languages as well. So one of the things in there is that those languages are so important because a lot of the whole linguistics, let's say Cyrillic, are very much like runes or a lot of the original languages here. So this is why I'm so excited to see, kind of where we're going with that. But anyway, I just wanted to give you that bit of a background. When I grew up in Saskatoon, I went into interior decorating because that was part of what my relatives were doing at the time. So I became an interior decorator. And then I went into nursing. And I basically formally became a registered nurse, and I specialized in neonatal intensive care. So I worked for it with very, very premature babies. As we fast forward another like 15, 20 years, I had 2 children, and those 2 children disclosed a lot of things that were happening in the underground and trafficking. And my children parallel, there was one of the largest cases in Canada called the Martinsville, Saskatoon case, and they called it Satanic Panic. And so my ex was a lawyer within those nefarious communities. And so my eyes were, after I left him due to, abuse and what I was seeing and being targeted, that's what got me into protecting children and land. And one day, while I was in the courts, saying, "Are you aware I cannot, submit to this court or any man because of even chakras and standing up and being subservient?" At that point, there's something came within me about protecting the children. And from them, I became very famous or infamous in those courts. And I was then taken subsequently by people in the military to the stargates, what you know as Hope, British Columbia, in these Okanagan areas. And now I've come to rest and visit on the psionic territory, and I'm in very close to what people call Q552 base, Nelson. And that's very important because this is where all the water and the bases and the direct energy weapons and the fake fog and fire. And as of Friday, I just had a report that we've got 8-foot bluish people walking around in our forests. So we've been having quakes and booms and fogs, and everything imaginable you can think of here is going on in these areas because we're sitting on top of gold and silver mines and ancient petroglyphs here. So it's like the Hopi mine prophecy rock. So that's part of why we're here. And so because of what I learned through the children, I went full on into everything you call from sexual abuse, ritual abuse, and learning everything I could about the occult and the esoteric and how these cults worked. And more importantly is how to deprogram it. Like anything, when you get into biofeedback, almost everything can be reversed because it's frequency. So that's where we come into, let's neutralize it, let's get together as women, let's stand in our power, let's reset up our original clans and tribes. Most people don't realize all the tribes, like from Russia all the way down to Cleopatra, we were all tribal women.
That's so true.
Unless you're unless you're a clone, maybe, but
Yeah.
for the most part, having said
Exactly.
that,
Well, Karen, you are laying out there a whole, treasure chest, of unbelievable layers to this human reality and culture and language. Let's go. I mean, gosh, I want to go into the Area 51, Canada, the
sure,
Q552 base, but
yeah,
also you mentioned that your own children were harmed. Their dad was a lawyer in the nefarious kind of satanic occult. And so,
yeah,
did it take you, your poor children were used in unthinkable ways? Is that what you're saying?
absolutely. And because of the court systems and manipulation, right? When you're seeing what I guess I'd seen, I didn't put a lot of the pieces together till later. I just thought this was isolated with, a lot of the abuse, but then I started the digging I did, I'll just say I was looking at Kathy O'Brien's work in Transformation of America. When I set up my clinic and went from, neonatal and postpartum and all that kind of nursing, I went and started training. So I became a Reiki master, quantum touch. I trained with Richard Bartlett. He was
Hmm.
amazing. Matrix energetics. One of
Amazing.
the
Let's
most.
focus on the children, my love. You
But yeah,
like
I'm coming
me?
back to
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah, I'm going to come right back to that.
Okay.
And so what I needed to do was to find out how I could help them the most. Because, you're up against, do you have land? So all of a sudden I knew I wanted to go. Somehow this sovereignty had to entail, we're safe land outside the jurisdiction of Canada. How did that fit? And then with what the children were disclosing, when you've got the court system and the legal system and the medical system and then you realize that they're all working together in this nefarious cult.
Yeah.
How do you go in and you help the children? So that's why I branched out and set up this, the very first holistic quantum integrative and alternative center ever for a wellness center. But especially that's why you have to learn how, when the children come in and you can recover them. It took me over 10 years to get my children back. They phoned me when they were close to 13 and 12. And back then in, 2006, they called me saying they were being shot. They were cutting their wrists.
So were they living with their dad, Karen? Like, can you lay that out for us? What was happening?
Sure. Yeah, the children were with me making the disclosures. And of course, as I went to the wrong doctors and the wrong
No, no, Karen, let's
RCMP.
go back. Sorry, I
But
meant
I'm
my
going to,
question. I don't think my question was clear. You just said
okay,
your children phoned you to tell
yes,
you that they were being hurt and harmed. And my question is,
yes,
were they living with their dad and they called you from their dad's house? Like, how were your
yes.
children being trafficked? How was that set up?
Yeah. Okay, I'll go back to that. So back in 1997, my children, especially my uh, girl at the time, I'm not going to put their IDs out for reasons because
Of
I
course,
never have because to protect them.
of course.
And so what happened? They started disclosing that they were seeing their father, and I'm going to name him because he's passed, but John Paul Kwok. He was a lawyer in Saskatoon, and they were trafficking not only cocaine, we found out, and children and drugs and guns and everything was going through Saskatoon. It was a huge hub center, and it was filtering to all the Cree, like First Nations and Star Nations around there. So it was a huge thing, and because he was Asian, he was tied into the Tongs and the Chinese mafia. He was also hand selected by not only the mafia but the Vatican. So he was trained in Pope Pius X, which is a Jesuit training center, and we know what they do. So these are basically the elite of the elite that are controlling the government, the MPs, the MLAs, the Queen's councils, that type of thing. And because he worked his way in through the union, he also worked his way in through the city of Saskatoon as their rep. So he was the inside union rep. So they had access to everything. And so the children at that time started disclosing that their father was touching them inappropriately and that they were seeing basically like orgies. And I had no idea at the same time that I still deal with today to this day, ex-RCMP Claudia Bryden. There was a Martinsville case that children were disclosing all of this in a daycare center just outside of Saskatoon. And so our cases were running actually parallel, if you can
Mm,
imagine.
yeah.
Totally unaware. And that court case went, there was 170 charges. Of course, mine, because of what I was starting to disclose and put together, mine actually had a news media blackout. So they sealed my court case.
Mm.
And so every time I would go to court saying I'm not seeing my children, he wouldn't bring them back. The court would say, go talk to the police. I would go to the police and they'd take my witness statement and they'd throw it in the garbage in front of me. And they said, we're not getting involved with him. So, when I first started, 30, 40, $50,000 later of legal fees, you're now bankrupt. You can't move. And then one day they do something up here, which they do a lot. It's called an ex parte order because remember, I'm dealing with all the lawyers. They were all working together. I had no idea of how corrupt it was. I
Yeah.
was so naive as a 30-year-old mom in my 30s or early 30s at the time, and I knew they were bad. And I had witnessed things. I just didn't realize I had witnessed them actually picking judges, and they would go out for what was called the First Wives Club. But on Thursday nights they would go for drinks, and that's where the lawyers would arrange who did what. So the dirty deals, I'd actually witnessed a couple in retrospect. And so the children started disclosing all these sort of things, what was involved. And my hair was standing on end. I totally knew that they were telling the truth. Children don't lie.
Yeah.
And then we got them into a focused custody access so we could have people listening. When I got the stuff back through the Freedom of Information Act, they redacted and blacked out everything, worse than the Epstein files. Like, it was bad. She would disclose who it was, and then they would, like, blank out the name.
I am so
So,
sorry for your children. I'm so sorry. And I'm so
you know,
grateful that you're
yeah.
bringing this forward, again, for other people to recognize it's been going on for a long, long time.
Yeah, it's multi-generational. It's been going on for thousands of years. These are bloodline cults, as we know, and they are parasitical. I mean, there's no symbiosis, there's no fixing, there's just no recovery for this either. And, these are crimes not only against the children, but against the nations and, definitely tribal. It's international law. And that brings me into wanting to reestablish the women and get them educated properly. Because we are actually sovereigns, and sovereign is a law term. Okay? And then below us is called this, what you would call heavenly or celestial or galactic. But sovereigns actually have a legal term. And it's not what most people think. It means be under the reign of the queen, but under the reign of the clan mother. You have to have the clan mothers. You have to have those systems. We have to set up our chieftains again, or dragons, or whatever you want to call them. But that system has to be put into place. It's still there. It's fragmented, but it's still there. And then we override all the second world, or what you call corpus juris secundum, the dead people. And that includes public, and that includes the royalty, which is under the private, which then subsequently goes into military, what they call private members association or common law. That is low. That's not where we are. And then above a third world, which is an inhabitant, like a prisoner of war, like a band of reserve. So, but back to the children, what really was the focus back then? I was mind blown. So you can imagine being a mom, having this disclosed to you, trying to go for help. I was trying to go psychologist. And remember, I was a neonatal nurse. I knew the child psychologists, I
Yeah.
knew the pediatricians, I knew the neonatologists, I knew all of them. And their hands were all tied.
Mm.
And even though I had the disclosure, what they did is an ex parte order, which means he went in when I didn't know about it, and they flipped the entire order to live with me. And I always had 50, even to this day, I still had 50-50, like joint custody. I never lost custody. But they would never bring the children back. And so the trauma that has occurred to the children, because they target them, right? And they're targeted for our bloodlines. So mine is AB positive. That's why they call it Ursa Major bear, the Ursuline bloodline, but you guys refer to it as Octarian because it looks like the bear, Tartarian. So it's the kind of, Anastasia ring and cedar is the Russia. So they really want to go after the oldest female of the oldest female of the oldest female. And this is something that we need to recognize, that we have slightly different bloodline because we kind of get a data dump. So I don't have the same exactly genetics that my sisters, that are younger than me that would have. So this is something that they want to know from an unbroken line. So when I deal with special forces and those people above and below and in those tunnel systems, or I help them, in recovery places, is that you need to have the intact DNA. So from that point of view, we'll just say anything within the last 6 years, especially, we cannot partake in because that would alter our genetics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also do part of that for recovery to try and help people to the best of the ability, because we don't at this time have anything to do that.
Yeah.
And so when I deal with people like Wide Area Body Network and the 6G, and Sabrina Wallace is a friend, we're trying to teach very natural things for recovery, because her, or like my children, we've all been subjected to this. We've all been institutionalized. We've all gone indoctrination, and they've lied to all of us. Our history is incorrect. We don't know, where do you
Everything.
start, right?
Can I,
Everything is inside out and inverted, right?
yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How are your children today?
They're in a really bad spot. Really bad spot. Part of it, I'll just say, they target it. They try to alter their hormones and, genes. She tried to slit her wrists. She was very suicidal. She left him. I'll just state to this day, they both hated him. They thought he was evil. They couldn't get away. They were under guard, basically. And I knew that there was some sort of a chipping or surveillance going on, because I went by the schools, and if I'd get within a block of their school, in their elementary school, I would have undercover police telling me that you better back off, or we're going to have to charge you if you get any closer. Because I was going to the schools to make sure they were not injected. I was making court documents to lawyers, to public health, to the school system, everything to protect, because I knew how important this was back then. I was Dr. Len Horowitz's rep and everyone else's back then. So I knew the dangers of what we were facing, but they haven't recovered. The mental and emotional trauma, that's why I went into learning everything about emotional release and somatics and what could I do. We'll talk about V-steams, like yoni steams. There are things we can do, just not tuning forks. And that's what got me into biofeedback, because biofeedback, if it's done properly, is one of the best recovery tools that we can, because we can energetically go in and help not only with the the physical, the mental, but the biofield. Most people don't realize our immune system is in this biofield, that we're holding on to stuff and
Hmm.
we're connected to everything. And that's how they do the loosh harvesting. This is how you have entities. That's how you have implants. And this is where I go through, because in our sound waves, a little different than a Rife or just a straight radionic device. Ryan Williams has developed some new voice technology, because in these children, or any of us, our voice holds that trauma. That fifth chakra holds the fear of injustice. And you can hear it in people's voices. So we have the ability to measure that as well, which to me is just about as accurate as doing live blood when I do that as well. So I work with the science and the art. But the children, they haven't quite recovered. And one of my children, he just sent me, if you can imagine, about 3 weeks ago, he said, well, I guess it was the end of January, he says, do you realize it was 20 years ago, Mom, that you took us and you, because they said that they were actually being hurt, and also that he had shot a gun, was playing Russian roulette with a gun and just missed my child's head. That was the kind of stuff that they were like traumatized with,
Oh my
right? Like
God.
in bonding material. And they called me screaming, and basically, if you don't come pick us up, we're going to kill ourselves. So I went and I picked them up. They wrote a letter to their father and to the system, or whatever it would be, and I left with them and I protected them for 3 months. I was subsequently, we were picked up and we were charged with, parental abduction, which of course all these charges were later dropped.
It's so
But,
terrible.
they brought us in, for,
Mm.
harassment or this or that. So they trumped up charges. They would also come to my clinic. It was under surveillance, every 3 and 4 letter agency. So as the city's Saskatoon police were calling on one line, COINTELPRO and SOS Communications were calling me on the other line. But, at that point, what was really interesting is that I see what happened to the children, right? Because I've done oils, I've done recovery, I've done biofeedback, but at some point, the breakdown of that mind control always seems to happen usually in their 30s,
Yeah.
30s or 40s. They're just starting. It's not quite as taken as, I think they had hoped it to be. So I had a bit of a reunion with one of my children, and it's too much. But a lot of their memories, I find, are fragmented. They're not going to remember exactly what's, at 3 and 4. What I did do is actually go in and give them all the pictures that we had this great happy life outside of this, and wanted to replace those. That was very, very important.
Mm.
And also to do it in the mother's tongue. Most people always want to do recovery in English. Hi, I'm going to do, tapping or this or affirmation work. And that's the wrong language. You go back to the mother's tongue, because this is now a multi-generational thing. So with my children, I'm trying to get them back into that Cyrillic or the Vedrus or the original Russian Tartarian languages. You have to be able to establish original customs, usages, and laws. And that's what they do when they take people from schools, residential. They want to disconnect us from our lineages. They want to disconnect us from the mother. They want to disconnect us from the earth, from Gaia, whatever people call it. They want to break that bond. And that's so important to reestablish it. And Danny, what's really weird is after one of them sent me this thing going, Mom, it was the happiest time of our life. You took us on the road, you taught us, I homeschooled them, we tried to get them in there. It was a glorious time
Uh,
until they traced me through my cell phone. So I gave away my cell phone for 10 years. I also went off the grid for 10 years, and I went cashless. So I actually just did gifting and barter. I wouldn't touch anything with the Queen's face on it here because I knew it was literally blood adrenochromed money. And I
wow.
was like, until I can reset this back up. And I'll also tell you, about 2 weeks ago, one of my children sent me, those big Rubbermaid containers that are like, all clear plastic, about 3 feet by 3 feet in the bathtub. He took the entire file that he found at his father's, because his father's passed away, so they're just cleaning out the estate still. He found, and I'm not joking, it's the largest case. It's in 2 accordions this tall, and it was soaking in the bathtub. And he said, I can't take it anymore, Mom. I'm having a cleansing. I said, good, great for you. I said, I burnt mine with all my friends one night. We had a little circle of friends, and I burnt all my clinic and my files, but I also burnt all the court records. I said, you needed to purge it. And he says, I read as much as I can, but he says, the lies and what it is. He says, I just have to accept that, people tried to interfere into the childhood that we deserved, that
Yeah.
you wanted to give us. And so Is that recovery? I think that's a lot to be said. When they're
Yeah.
32 and 33, that's where they're at right now. And
Mm-mm.
it's not a pretty place to be.
No,
But at
no.
least it's in a stage of healing, and that's all
Mm.
I can do is be here as a mother
Yeah,
and just provide that love. And
totally.
clinically, one of the most profound things is when I did do this through the course and we were charged, I was taken by someone in the military, and he wrote a book called Stolen Innocence. He was an ex-Canadian vet, R.W. Nicholson, Rob Nicholson. And he wrote all about the satanic stuff out in the Okanagan and the Kootenays, where I am right now. But they took me to a stargate, and I was taken there by these people. And so I've actually seen things that look like SG1 and that movie where you see all the symbols and everything else.
Describe
These
it. Like,
places
where
exist.
is it? Where is it? How big is it? What does it sound like? Like, take us there, as much detail as possible, because you are good at detail.
Oh yeah, yeah. I We were in this van for hours, right? It's in the middle of the Okanagan. We went for hours, and we'll just say it's very close, just like where I am right now. Everything is on fire and direct energy weapons. It's not about their ground penetrating. So they're going for the tunnel systems about 10 kilometers or 5 miles down, level one, and then there's a level two at 200 and level three at 400. But those are another stories when you know about the tunnels and the bunker systems out here. So I was taken out to, we'll just say by Hope. So most people know that Silver Creek, Hope, Lytton, just south of Kelowna, is where a lot of the supposedly fires are, like Maui or Paradise right now. So we're seeing what's been going on. And so I live in these areas and I look after the people and I try to recover them to the most you can. But you can never recover all of the damage that we see that's being delivered on our head, whether it's through fire, flood, you know,
Yeah,
geoengineering, chemtrails, right?
yeah.
But the actual area is gorgeous because they're in the boreal forest. So they bury these communities and stuff inaccessible from the public. So we're literally like a safari, but in the boreal forest, almost, going through. And actually, it was almost ironic. You know how you're psychically connected to things? I was sitting there and I was bored because I was sitting in the passenger seat and I rolled down the window and I was playing with the leaves. That's how tight we were. The leaves were just hitting the van. And so I pulled my hand out and I grabbed a leaf and I got it and he just slammed the van down. And I said, "What is it? Is it illegal to touch like wildlife in here? What's your problem, right?" And he goes, "We're here." And don't ask me how I psychically, energetically knew where we were. He stopped the van. We walked for probably about 400 or 500 feet past the trees, and there was this clearing. And there was all the petroglyphs, and just like you see, like, when you look at James Spader, right? Like in there, like I'm looking at the stuff that's ancient hieroglyphics,
What's it?
you
What's
know.
it? What's it on? Is it a mountain? Is it a big circle? What are you looking at exactly
I'm
in this
looking at
clearing?
there's like a clearing and it had all the symbolism on it. It almost looked like rock, like petrified trees. There were crystal caves and accesses. There were other caves that were from pre-flood, where tunnel entrances, and this is where there's a lot of Yeti and Sasquatch sightings as well. By the way,
And
there's
the
lots of,
stargate's in the middle. So all the
and
rocks and caves around the outside of the clearing, and in the middle
there
is this
there on
stargate.
there is a sort of a gate there, and I never got quite through into some of those parts, but this is where it is. And again, now I would never want to go up there because of the radiation, right? Because of the direct energy weapons. This is exactly where the fires were. They were within that trajectory, and a lot of people go, "Oh, they just flattened lit, and like, there's nothing left." And I went, "There was a direct energy weapon, so I don't go back into the areas." I did recovery because there was actually one of my clients called me screaming because the house was shaking, and she opened up the phone, and I'm watching the same thing she is, and we're seeing these direct energy weapons and beams, and the whole mountain was black, and they literally got radiated. It came through her cabin, and it was so bad, Daddy, it buckled the floorboards and it threw the tiles off the shower.
Oh my
And
God.
I'm watching all this in real time with her going, "Oh my gosh." Like, I mean,
Oh my
I
God.
was in the middle of this, like, Star Wars,
Wow, wow,
war.
wow.
And I will just say, those people ended up burnt.
Oh
They ended up
no.
losing some of their eyesight. cats, the dogs were bleeding out their paws. She was
Oh
bleeding
my God,
rectally.
that's
This is
terrible.
not simple stuff. So I
No.
did a whole bunch of shows with Alfred Weber at News Inside Out. So they were all recorded because I wanted that. Just like when I got the vials, and I'm just going to side for 1 second here and come back. But when I got the vials from those, we'll say vials that people were injected with, because they were given to me for a reason, I went out to the Okanagan, put them under a microscope with the appropriate gear. I was the first one to do it with Alfred Weber as a tribunal war crimes judge because I wanted them prosecuted at our level. There's no diplomatic immunity in international courts.
Hmm.
Okay?
Hmm.
So those were things that were really, really important. That's why those areas are really important right now.
Yeah. Can I
Does that
ask
make
you,
sense?
yeah,
Hmm.
can I ask you, why were you taken to the Stargate and did you go through it? And as you looked at it, I'm going to assume, like you said, it was so some people don't know what they look like. We're told they look like a big loop, you know? So why were you taken there? Did you go through? If so, tell us what happened. And if you didn't go through, what was in it or through it?
Okay. One of the things I just remember there was all these like trees, like rocks, like with the petroglyphs with the symbols. They were carved and etched into this material, and in there was a cave. I don't really have a lot of memories. They're very vague, and I'm sure for a reason. And one of the things as well is I've also been taken to what they call the center of the universe out here, which again is another area that apparently is
Okay,
connected
how
to
did you
the
get there?
in
Through
Earth.
it through another Stargate?
No, we were just like literally we're asked by some of the First Nations to go there,
Go
and
where?
a lot of these are sacred sites or where they, which I found out actually only this month that when I was looking at Google Earth that where we went to the center of the universe of the Earth there is actually right next to where supposedly the alleged children were taken for the hunting parties. They weren't taken in Kamloops; they're on the front, gates as they're trying to allege 215 bodies. They were actually, if they were hunting parties, were never. They were out in the secluded areas.
So
But
Karen, are you saying that you're that when you sat with the elders of the different tribes, they are inviting you to go to a
yes,
place called the center of the universe, but that
yeah,
place is on this planet and it's
yes,
in Canada and it's next to where the children went missing one day with Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, which is a true documented story, been on the news all over the world. They
yeah.
went for a picnic, kids went missing, they were never returned. Okay, is that correct?
Absolutely. Well, that to the best of our knowledge, what allegedly
No, I
happened. But
mean the
yes, I
center
was
of the
taken.
universe.
This
Yeah.
that's what I'm coming to. So the elders, we were at something. I was in 2010. That's why I left my clinic and all my health centers and my staff and everything else. I was invited to go to what was called Protecting the Sacred at Lillooet. So that's north of Kamloops. So those areas are all within they call the Chouette territory or Lillooet territory. So yes, I was asked by all these elders and chiefs and hereditaries. I want to distinguish that. I have just as much say as someone in the red tribes, the Asian tribes, or the black tribes, or someone like Fleur Braun or something. Okay, there are many different clan mothers. There were 13 major ones. We have all of our stuff. They might have their Solomon seal for the blacks and Israelites, the original tribes, the Hebrews, right, versus the Zionists. But we also have got ours. Ours is called Noah's Ark or the Camel's Eye or Kemetic, and all the Cleopatra tribes. So basically, all the white girls have got our tribes in peace. And then over here, they would have wampum belts and what they call peace pipe treaties or canes of authority. So these peace treaties are basically the galactic. I would almost say they're the Andromeda, right? They're almost like the Andromeda kind of treaties. That's how I get people. And if you know a little bit of one, we try and find some common ground. So these places are very sacred. I've been to, when you have these treaties, they were put not on paper. Everyone goes, well, where's the document? Is this a proclamation? Is this some, Magna Carta? Is it whatever it is? I said, it doesn't matter what Canada and the States does. I don't care about the Republic. I don't care about the Magna Carta. I don't care about the Queen. None of those were ever authorized by signatory authorities,
Hmm.
i.e., the Klan Mothers all have to have their autographs and signatures on it for it to be an international treaty. The rest of them are bloody business contracts. And that's the same thing. So there's no Canada, there's no states, there's no England, there's, the kingdom, the, United Kingdom. The whole thing about the Queen is just a sham. I mean, even if you listen to Michael Tessarian or another friend of mine, Santos Bonacci back then, and everyone's so focused on this common law that it's a bloody distraction. I don't care about David Woodmiller. I don't care
Yeah.
about any of this stuff because you know
No.
what? They're in English, and I don't care if it's Parsi syntax or whatever people do. It's not in the original light language. It's not in your mother's tongue. So
Yeah.
if I said hey ya ho, Yahweh hey yo manituma kwa, sasibo, that boija, ya yubya te badane, which means I love you very much and thank you so much, Danny, in our mother's tongue, right?
Ah.
And people go,
Love you
what are you
too in
talking
my mother's tongue.
right? And I go, if I don't want to sing "Oh Canada," that's not the national anthem.
No,
It's "Hey
no.
Hey Ho Manitoba Kwa
Oh, I
Yahweh."
love it. No, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And thank you so much for bringing so much. There's just so much here that it's just impossible to pick a subject because you're just piquing thought and inquiry with everything that you're saying. Thank you for sharing the most precious thing, which is your own children. Thank you
Yes.
for being so open because it's rare for someone to be able to hold the space and talk about their own kids and their trauma. Thank you for sharing their recovery process and send them so much love for their recovery. I do want to go back to the biofeedback machine in a minute,
Sure.
but I
Yeah.
also don't want to lose time that we don't go back into the Q552
Five two.
base,
Sure.
which is the Area 51 American version of the Canada one, the
Mhm.
Canada base, where children that we know, adults, James Rink, sadly no longer with us, James Casbolt, I mean, he is not doing well. He just come out of prison. I don't know if
Right.
he's had something removed. Poor thing. He talks, and I'm not being unkind, and I hope he doesn't see this. And if he does, I'm just trying to be helpful, James. But it looks like they've done some kind of a frontal lobotomy on him. The man he was, so smart, so quick, so intelligent, so
Yeah.
fired up. All these with Kerry Cassidy years ago, all these
Yeah. Yeah.
interviews now, you're like, oh my love, what happened? Max Spears dead. Holly Bagley, who's reached out to me, I'm bringing her on my channel too. You say that these beloveds were trained, captured, trained at the Q552 base near Nelson in Canada. How do you
Mhm.
know that?
Well, I don't know that. That's the whole
Oh,
point.
that's what
Everything.
you told me that. That's why I wrote it down.
Oh no, but I'm saying that's what they're saying. I mean,
Okay,
I wasn't there
sorry.
with them. I'm saying they're saying that. So
They
I
have
can say
said this.
allegedly they have told me this, right?
Yeah,
Okay. I have no problem saying that. I don't know that because I wasn't there. But I will tell you what I do know. Okay. One
yes,
of the
please.
things as well is that those are connected into many bases. And I've been in vehicles that they've taken over and the cars have gone, they just like we were Ubering 10 years ago. Okay, I would joke because we have another one near what's called Medicine Hat called CFB Suffield. That's the Canadian, British, and American. That basically the former Minister of Defense Paul Hellyer told me all about, and Victor Visagi I was with, and Grant Cameron, and Stephen Bassett, and all the modern knowledge tour guys like with David Whitehead. So I spent the time with that. I'm also very close, by the way. Q52 is David Sarita. So I have David Sarita, half an hour one way, that's doing all the, tech, and I have Paul Harris the other way. So I'm kind of like all of us quantum gurus and pioneers here are all sitting in this area. What happens is with the Q552 base, it also connects into Banff. So, of course, Banff and Jasper have been known to be having your quakes lately, and, of course, the fires to take them down into Calgary and all that area. And that's exactly where Trump wants to put a lot of their AI and golden domes, which is going to basically destroy all of our ecosystem. They will destroy the watershed as they have in many places in the States. People are dying there. And it's insane. So this stuff has got to be stopped because this is not being rolled out. People don't realize it got rolled out 20, 30, 50 years ago. And Sabrina, myself, Zach, Power the Pulse, also Tony Pantalleresco, some of the top people in the field have been warning on this because right now what they're trying to do, and this is, I want to disclose to your community very much so, I knew what happened to James Rink, and this is where I want to get into the I know part. Okay? A lot of people are targeted, but you also put yourself in a position to be a magnet for these targets. One of it has to do with pH and alkalinity. It has to do, and I'm not going to get into a lot. I knew James for like 15 years. I was behind the scenes. I was doing biofeedback. I also am a professional, clinical, medical instructor in biofeedback, in Rife radionics. I have more credentials than most people can do. Yoni steam, peri-steam, massage therapy, you name it, we've done it. Now, what happens in there is people don't ask questions, and they started giving him all these things. I'll just say something M to the blue, things that were put into rectums with pace, all sorts of stuff. These are all pharmaceuticals that are chipped. And a lot of them will sit dormant and they can come to life. And we call it basically through remote Tesla-phoresis. So they put it in through these pills, through these blue colored stuff that look really cool. And I'll just say zeolite and different clays that are very nano that go actually up into the brain. And I don't want metals in my brain at that fragment when you're running 6, 7, and 8G from satellites for targeting. Now what's happening is we're finding people are being harvested 6 months, a year, or 2 years later after they've taken these fads. And that is what happened to James Rake. You don't know who they're sleeping with. You don't know, and I talk all about the biofield, but if you want to talk about shedding, what is going on through that transmission? And so people have not been careful. They've become very lax, and there was a reason why we had a 6 feet. I'd say stay 12 now. Because I'm one of the women that will bleed near anyone that's taken that joy juice. Okay? And I don't need that. I actually went unconscious and broke my wrist because I got too close to someone.
Wow, wow.
Okay, and so this is just as deadly and more deadly when you have a pull shift going on, the CMEs, the changes in the thing. So that's why the biofeedback is one of the most important tools that Ryan Williams at Insight Health Apps has developed. And I am seeing people here. We've got stuff even for free for people. You know, a lot of these therapists are charging $300-$600, even taking our technology and making it look like a psychic reading. But MDs and naturopaths are using this, and chiropractors behind the scenes. And so are a lot of the different areas and hospitals now. Like in Europe and in Russia, they use biofeedback.
Mm-hmm.
This is really the precursor to the regen bed if it's done properly. Because I will say, if you've got a whole bunch of that stuff in your system, we call graphene. You don't put things like Rife machines on and PEMFs and things that are doing that because you're going to electrocute them basically. If they're, it's like a spoon in the microwave.
You mean like they're
And
going to
that's,
get triggered up or fired up or
yes, they
okay.
will get activated, and now you can get different things coming in with solar eclipses and stuff like that. And they are doing this. Okay, so 6-7G, as Sabrina and I have talked about, and we are just basically wanting to teach people the natural stuff. Like I talk about essential oils and steaming and tuning forks, and I just want you to think as my biofeedback. It is not more electrical 5-6G. It is actually a generator that can make any sound, and I can take anything in these Rife books and every disease just about in the world that they've made, bioweapon, we have mathematical codes for. So I have a mathematical code for every essential oil on this planet. Everything natural, natural versions of tobacco, natural versions of everything. And that was part of the problem that I'm seeing in there. People are doing supplements that are different than James Rink. So I would tell you his demise and what happened to him was actually because it was self-induced and from all the uninformed, inappropriate people that were around it that gave it to him. Because even things like terahertz, I just want to say with the wands and those foot things, you could put someone into congestive heart failure. They actually shock us, or when I put, I'll just say patches on, you put a patch on me, I'll have a heart attack in 8 hours. And I have.
Okay. So
Okay?
let's just, because obviously we don't want to be casting accusations because somebody passed away, somebody who was hugely loved and he was doing all kinds of different treatments to help himself.
But they're
So we're not,
contraindicated.
but we're
Yeah,
not,
they're contraindicated.
we're not
Yeah,
accusing a single person of taking him out because that would be wrong to do here.
that's right.
But you are
That's right.
giving us warnings on good people meaning well that are messing with things that they might not be fully aware of, but their intention is good. He had, didn't he have Graves' disease that he spoke about? I mean, his eyes. I mean, I saw him. I saw him weeks before he passed away. He came to my event and gave me a bunch of flowers, you know.
Hmm.
And the last thing he said to me was, Danny, we've all got to get along. And he was so right, because there's been so much ridiculous, pathetic fighting over the years between huge egos. And you could see physically his demise. His eyes were just not, they were so big, he just looked so unwell. And I said, James, what happened to you, my love? He was just this little shrunken man, at the end. But he also was stating on his own channel that he was multi-cloned, multi
Yes.
times. And there was an exhaustion level. Now, I don't know enough about the secret space program to
Yeah.
comment with intelligence or actual understanding, but this is what he himself said on his own
Yeah.
channel.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, I think, a really great point that you bring up is that a lot of people, like I said, they're just basically misinformed, but they also shouldn't be doing this because every one of those ones he was on was contraindicated for his conditions. He had underlying conditions that they didn't deal with properly. And then there were medications that were given. I was with him right into the hospital. Like, I mean, there was myself and Ash and other people, okay? And I'll just say, this is my caveat. I love a lot of this stuff, but people need to be protecting themselves. And I mean, this is something even with you. I always suggest people have like wearable air purifiers and stuff that you can wear because they blow the clean air. They prevent some of this stuff. And a lot of it came because I know people that were actually injected and were, the amount of transmission, as you guys call shedding, was astronomical.
Yeah.
And that's what's taken out our people. That's what's taken out the community. And unless you can do it safely and
Mm.
appropriately, which it wasn't, because I was on the committees with him in behind the scene,
Yeah. Yes.
even on further shows. But I just
Yeah.
wanted to say that because it really, when people come to me, because I'm doing stuff like every day, I take people on, I'm on Zoom, I'm on FaceTime, I'm on Telegram, I'm on all those things that we can actually see people like this because I want to get the education to them. And I've got so many therapies, people have never even heard of them. I can when I start talking about yoni steams or let's do a yoni pill and they're going, what? Or I'll talk to a medical doctor or natural, they don't know what I'm talking about either half the time. So,
Yeah.
I think if people want to go back and, I would love to have a really great, I think, roundtable with some women that you've got. And I was talking to Carrie Cassidy and she wanted to do this as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I think bringing in another level of information, we can make a huge difference and set up our women. You've got a background like Henderson. You got coats of arm. I've always
Oh,
wondered, what is
yeah, yeah. Well,
your
yeah.
mom's, like your mom's side? And I want to really activate that,
Yeah,
the women,
it's my dad's the Scot, my mum's the Welsh, so I was always going to be a Celt no matter what. And then the bitchy bit's just my natural nature. But anyway, a couple of things. You
Okay.
mentioned Calgary. I used to live in Calgary when I was a nursery
Yeah.
nurse, and it was an hour and a half to drive into Banff. Banff is so beautiful, such a gorgeous town. That's where
Stunning.
one of the Olympic villages is. You mentioned
Yep.
Medicine Hat, which was the nearest military base to
Yeah.
Calgary. And on the weekend, the British nannies, we'd all get together with the military boys from the Medicine Hat, and it was so funny.
Oh my
Nobody
gosh.
dated, none of us dated. We had because they would say it's terrible. They would say the Canadian girls were so easy. They were naughty. We had so much fun. That's so, and my friend Derek, I met my friend Derek, who, and we've been in touch all these years. This is like 35, 40
I
years. No, not quite. No, 30 something years. I'm not that old. And it was so amazing. I can't believe the areas I physically lived across this world that are
Yeah.
like major hubs like San Diego,
Yeah.
Coronado. I lived there for years. But, and also knowing that because I've been there.
Right.
These areas are so pure and pristine, and they were. And there's so many minerals, natural
Really
minerals.
coming.
Canada is rife with these mineral deposits and gold and mines, and it just, but I can't even speak a word big enough to say how my mind is so blown and disappointed in our humanity. I don't care who it is. You mentioned Trump mining and taking places for themselves and just taking out areas like
Yeah.
Maui. What else did I make a note of? Because the biofeedback machine. I just
Yeah.
wanted to go a little bit into that
Sure.
as well, to so people know they can come to you, they can get a session with you. But what will
Yeah.
you be doing remotely with them? So show us.
Well, this is a incredible remote device. Obviously, these are all apps, and the reason we went to that because I have those $30,000 machines here. Right, this works better, and I don't have to like get everyone hooked up like you're into an ECT shock therapy chair either. And put all the leads on like we did in the hospital. This is a form of radionics and ultrasound because what we're doing is your voice is an ultrasound. But we have different things that Ryan has invented, and very much like Shari Edwards, and it's called Fast Fournier. So basically, we're able to use the voice similar to taking out your blood. A lot of people have taken photos and tried to tap in a remote view that way. So these were all designed as apps because we wanted it not to be a class 2 medical device, because that's what was happening is we were all getting shut down, right? They were making these devices, unlawful and illegal. Having said that, what I did like before 6 years ago and those things came out, we can't do medicine the same way. So I
Yeah,
would not hook up people that are pregnant. I wouldn't hook up someone if it's got a pacemaker. And,
of
and a
course.
lot of people don't realize that the same thing that went into the arm went up to their nose is the same thing. They don't realize it's not a deployment. That's the hardest thing I think most people have to face is when they were taking these things, swabs, the swabs were just as contaminated. And now we've got children, as you know, they're spraying. So it was spray and stuff like that. And they could do an animal. So we had, 400 ostriches done here. They're doing dogs, cats, everyone. I mean, they're trying to patent and digital everything. What happens is that we simply go into here and we have literally like rife codes where you've got up to 20,000 megahertz. And if I've got a tapeworm or I got a serratia coming down that they're putting through these trails above our heads and you're breathing it in and it eventually gets in, that serratia, if I can pick it up here, I literally can just go to serratia and literally just hit how many seconds I want and it'll start playing the frequency of it. These are designed basically that you would go in and put headphones on, or we've got bracelets if you don't have a lot of heavy metals and stuff in you. But one of the things in here that came out, and we've just actually launched it this week, is called a quanta cap. And we have 2 different sites. This is where a client will actually send me their email and they will take their picture and their voice, which is not hard. You take your voice activated biofeedback voice analysis and you send me the picture and you send me the voice. I will do a mini session and then I send it back to you and you can listen to it for a week. And so now you have customized. So as weird as it is, I can do a herb, a plant. Any of these plants here can be converted to an oscillation or a frequency. So we can give energetic, electrical herbalism. I can scan you right now. I could do 40,000 tests. So I could do every iridology point, every acupuncture point, every meridian, here, there, whatever. And then like muscle testing, I could find the right remedy for you. So in here, these are the newest things, the quantum cap. So I will give that out for free if people want to send me their email to my clanmother13@gmail with a K. But what happens is the newest thing that we came out with is also, it's called biofeedbackvoicescan.com. And this is again another site where Ryan just developed, we just launched it this week, is that people can again put their own voice in and their picture and you can see your aura for free. So if you want to see what the biofield looks like, that is going to be really state-of-the-art stuff. So for example, if I have a client here and it's pretty weighed out and it doesn't look too hot, we're going to try and get them into something that looks a little bit more vibrant. And literally, I will challenge anyone. I challenge you to get a hold of me because most people within less than 3 minutes can feel the change actually physically changing in their body. They can feel the vibrations, and that's how important sound is. And that's what we're trying to go for, something that's really hot, vibrant, because you can see the biofield, and we have the different cameras for that. So in here, we can also start giving people results. This is the herb you need. This is the, Bach flower. This is the, we found a biofilm. I found a lime. I found a morgellon, whatever it might be. So these are available. And right now, Ryan said what he would do is give people 2 weeks free to use it. So if they want to use it, they can use our little beginner starter. And I actually invent a lot of the libraries. So I have entire libraries, Danny, I've made for sexual abuse, ritual abuse, past lives, ETs, every CDC thing you can think of that they've made, I have actually a library for. And it's kind of like muscle testing energetically. So one of the things that came in here is we would simply just put people's voice and everything in here. So let's say I want it to go in and I want it to do you, me, a child. I can also do pets. So I do holistic vet med, by the way, and land clearing. So what I did is because I can, test you, I can also put this in the frequencies not only into you, but I can put them into water and into crystals. And this is where, because of the fires and what they did and the damage to the environment here, they destroyed our pristine lakes here that are glacial fed, like Dr. Emoto's. So I decided I was going to clean it from all their accelerants and everything else and biowarfare, and I would make from spring water a new template, the mother code, and I go put that back into the water. So
Mm.
now we can start using this to not only put our food on and clear it, but we can imprint it with energetics. And so this is very easy to do. And it works no different than having, 30,000 basically tuning forks at a time. So this is something that people, I think, should try because it is for free. I'm not here trying to sell anything. And by the way, I'm not in paid staff either. Okay. People always like, oh, she's trying to push stuff. I went, it's free. I'm showing you stuff that is free.
Right.
If
And
you want
and
to
you
do
and
stuff.
I, also you and I have no affiliation. I'm just presenting, I'm platforming you because I know you're a good person doing the best you can, and your information is incredible. And the lineage you come from and the things you've been through is just incredible. Go ahead with your screen.
Can you see how it's picking up what you were talking? Okay. So that
Right.
was
Okay.
that was voice profiling you. From that,
Right.
you are actually volts, amps, and resistance. This is what you call quantum computing.
Hmm.
And we now have got, and it's a little different than AI, but we've got basically in there that will actually come in and based on your voice records and your picture, we can actually see what will be some of the best herbs and remedies for you.
Okay.
So in other words, you could even tell me what herbs you're on,
Right.
and
But
I
I
could
don't want
test the
to,
minerals.
we won't do that because I don't want that information
No,
out
no,
there.
no.
But I
It's
understand what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah, it's not on you, and we're not going on you. But
Yeah.
I'm just showing you in here. So just as we do the voice and stuff like that, we put the picture in. And the reason I like to do that is because one, I do face reading and iridology and sclerology. Like you can read everyone's face. Like
Mm.
this will be your liver meridian, your conception vessel, all sorts of things. So a lot of people, once you start looking at it, I can look for food. So this is actually me that's on here. I'm doing me, not you, just to let you know. I like to do a therapy every day. To do my water and everything else. That's why people go, "What do you mean she's like in her like mid 60s, right?"
Yeah.
Right? I've got more energy than most people too, right? But in here, all it takes is seconds, and I will know the minerals, the vitamins. And I built a thing in here. It's like traditional Chinese medicine. I did a Pachakarma. I did an Ayurvedic stuff because, I mean, different things work for your genetics, even blood types. I always ask people, what's your blood type? Because there's actually about 60. So we know about eight. Four are actually terrarian, and basically the other 50 some are non-terrarian or hybridized. And so how people assimilate things, like if I'm more iron based and someone that's Rh negative is more copper based, but I also have a rare set of adrenochrome that I keep frozen in Europe, by the way. So there's an area 51. Did you know that? Blood type?
No.
Most people have never seen that. So we showed that at Project Ascension.
Okay,
You know,
hold on, please. You just said there's an Area 51 in Europe that is an adrenochrome blood type. That's what you said. I don't know what that is. That what you said? Because I don't know what that means. I know what adrenochrome is. I know what Area 51 is. I know what a blood type is. But what do you mean exactly?
okay, they have had all these hybridization programs going on, and because of their CRISPR and genetic, or it was called Project Panther through the Human Genome Project, they've been manipulating genetics. So they've been creating new blood types. And there is an entire list about that long that I came across. And there's one that literally says RH51. So I always say it's like probably Area 51. But
Oh,
there's
okay.
RZ, and whatever. But they are stored in the frozen blood banks, like the Red Cross, throughout different labs in the world that they use, which of course will be selected rare adrenochrome banking. And most people are not aware of this. So when they say, and I literally have seen blue blood, by the way. Everyone goes, "Oh, it's okay. We all bleed red." No, we don't. I've actually seen blood come out of someone and oxidize because they were from the original, basically bloodlines. They were from a progenitor bloodline, the original nobility royalty. And I've only seen that once in my life. But like I said, it's no different than when I got to hold the copper plates. People, like I said, back to the treaties, they always think it's some paper stupid thing. It's not. They did treaties on copper plates, and I held the 5 copper plates after I went to Kamloops to arrest the queen. And then the rest of the tribes met with me, went with these copper plates that are humongous, like Joseph Smith and Moses coming down with the plates. They went to Ottawa and they smashed it and basically made all the royalty and monarchy and all that basically illegal aliens here. So we
Who
could bring in the Space Force.
who smashed the copper plates? Who
The
smashed?
original tribes, there was Bo, a lot of the different
Why would
tribes,
they smash their original copper plates if it had
because it
their
was the
great?
act, it was the treaty with the monarchy with the Draco Reptilian and the Queen.
Oh, so they were
And
forced to smash their original tribal codes for the planet because the Draco and the fake royal families came in. This is coming out. I wish more people would
yeah,
hurry up and get it. How
yeah,
the royal family, the British royal family, for example, were
right.
filtered in. There's a Rothschild connection. Bloody Rothschilds. I'm sick of hearing about them.
The
Bauer,
red
Red
shields.
Shield. So
Yeah.
boring. But people are getting there. But I think in England as well, a while ago, you would have this, oh my God, you can't say anything about the Queen, and now people are like, yawn, or certainly now that Charles and Andrew, are just so disgraced, and Charles is acting like a full-blown radical Muslim.
There are
Um,
so many things, though, that people don't realize. Like, I got to spend a couple times, but recently I spent some time with Jessica Morocco and Peter Berger, who's known as Peter the Insider from ACIO.
oh, I
So,
haven't heard
actually,
about him for ages. Peter the Insider. I'd forgotten about.
Peter Berger,
There's so many people.
they released a video with me. Okay, most of it was redacted, and we'll just say we had a 3 hour talk, and only an hour was interview because it was heavily edited. But
When was
if
this?
you, it was actually a few months ago. So if you look at ACIO under readings by Jessica Morocco, okay, you'll see that it says ACIO Karen McDonald Super Space Multi Agent or something like that, because I wanted to go back and get some more records from him, right? And of course, Peter Berger, if you don't know, is the 12th Division Commander. And the
Of
advanced
what? Of what?
ACIO is the Advanced Contact Intelligence Agents. He works primarily out of the Pine Gap area out of Australia, but he
Oh,
was former NATO Slovakian, but he's been in the military. And he works with Jessica Morocco as well. She's a intermediate galactic liaison, and they have got, to me, they're like the planet's men in black, basically. And so he very recently, and very rare has he come out, and they did a few where they actually interviewed some of us and put those out on their YouTube. And so if you want to see something, it's pretty amazing to
yeah.
hear what they've got, because that's like getting the Akashic or military records on some of us. So the short version of what he said, I always laugh because I said I'm not a Canadian, right? Which I'm not. I'm not in their jurisdiction as a, and I'm a signatory, like authority, right? I have signatory power. And so what was funny is he kept saying, "You're not a Canadian," but he told me about some of the things where I had been involved in with Shagvera. I had been involved in releasing children in Dasho, like going back into all these different things. He told me about the gates I came in through. He talked about, you didn't arrive just in '64. You actually came in 1924. He gave me all my parents, all their identification, all the tribes, all the lineages,
Is this
tribe travel.
so this man that's talking to you is reading your Akashic records, your lineage. He hasn't got something written down, and this is a physical military person. You see, what we need to be doing, in my opinion, my humble opinion, just the blonde here, on the planet in the disinformation field. I'm sorry, the disclosure field. We've got to bring forward the actual leaders, the actual speakers, not the self-appointed, self-anointed, galactic, hobots. We need the people coming forward with the actual information of the actual situation. And people have to get their head around the fact that of course, there's more than one voice. Of course, there's more than one voice. I don't know what's going on. It's been so crazy lately. I can't say his name because he'll tell me off, but a friend of mine
Yeah.
with an Andromedan link. Um, he was
Oh,
someone did
AC,
I'm not saying
AC.
it, not saying it, Karen. Read the room, Karen. I just said this person will tell me off. Anyway, so I said somebody made a ridiculous drawing of him. This man, he's a robust man. Everybody knows him
Yep.
for his height and his robustness. They put him in this embarrassing skin tight spacesuit and then
Yeah.
presented him as the whatever they're called, the ambassador, the galactic speaker for the Andromedans. Now, in his 36 years of whatever
Yeah.
report, he's never told anyone he's that. He'd never put himself there. He doesn't
No.
possess that ego. And I'm like, can people stop effing around and trying to create image and groups and cult and leaders because we're not interested. We all
No.
need to be together, but there are people's voices missing, and it's pissing me off because
Yeah.
it's 2026, it's already
Right.
April. They need to damn well step forward. I get people writing to me all the time for years, same thing, and they'll say, I'm worried about coming out. I'm like, dude, look what I'm doing. Look who I
Yeah.
bring on: David Icke, Billy Carson, Kathy
That's
O'Brien.
going to be
Come on.
amazing.
But I know that that's for the conference, but I bring them forward. I respect them. They're my friends, and they are so brave in the
Yeah.
information they bring. And people, do not be fooled by Billy Carson. He's not just a beautiful black man. He is so clever, and he gets information. He brings it in, and there are people that you can look at. You go, I'm not quite sure about you, and then you've listened their resonance to your point. And you're like, my God, you're getting that information from elsewhere as well, not being possessed by a spirit and channeling, or
Right.
letting the reptilian take over your body. There are some very
No.
blessed people. I really do believe I'm so blessed to connect to so many of you. But we need some bigger voices because what they've done is the disclosure community, let's say
Right.
that you and I dive into, it's tiny. It is
Yeah.
not reaching the entire
Not
global
at all.
system. And it's in there is a few little shitheads that need a bit of a spanking, and it's time to sit down and
Nick,
be quiet. Right?
we
I'm
got to get
so
us.
done. So
They need a
done.
smackdown.
Yeah, really need a smack for lying and misleading and then attacking and trying to be the voice, and so boring, and it's so wrong, and it's so reptilian. Anyway, and I'm not saying I'm done defending. I am absolutely done defending. So,
I'm so with you. Like,
yeah,
people don't get like what it
but
is. Like at one point I was on those stages and on those rallies, and then I started looking after
I
people
just
that
want to
were.
finish. I just want
Oh,
to
sorry,
finish. No, then
sorry.
please come in to
Yeah,
make my point that you mentioned a couple of names. I've never heard of them. That doesn't mean anything. I am hungry for other big people who are connected on the military base, on an honest base, to come
yeah,
forward, to stop hiding. Stop hiding because we're being misled and we're being lied to. The good news is the disclosure environment of which I speak is
yeah.
so tiny
It
that
is.
those who are actually doing wrong and dark and maybe don't even know that what they're doing, that it's not going to hurt the rest of the world. But within inside this disclosure environment that you and
It will
I are
help.
connected to, there's some great voices, there's some great frequencies,
Yeah.
there's some real giants, and I'm really praying that they're just going to step up now and step out now. I'm tired of doing the heavy lifting. You're tired of doing the heavy lifting. I want the people to come forward, and I'll support you guys. I'm sure you will too, Karen, right?
Absolutely. Like, people don't realize, like, I wanted to share this, and I don't know why. We got to this, when you were talking about this thing came to me, I got to tell Danny about this. So, a lot of people don't realize how quick we can be taken. Okay. And I think a lot of people, it's like, how much, like, do you remember, like, when you're talking about Tony Rodriguez, right, and stuff like that? Because they don't want us to remember, or it's fragmented. Now, something happened actually about not even 2 months ago. I went to the next town to go get some winter tires, as you can appreciate, right, in the mountains, right, up here. So I went to go get new winter tires, and it takes 40 minutes because I'm in an isolated village, right? And so I went to the next one, and it takes 45 minutes to get there. So I pick up a senior citizen that I take out to the hot springs every month, right? That's my community contribution out here to people that are clean. And so we went out there, and literally I walked in and I said, "Oh, I'm early." And he goes, "What are you doing here so early?" I said, "What are you talking about? It's like 5 to 1. My appointment's at 1." He says, "Karen, it's not even 12:30." I said, "No, you don't get it." I said, "I just left my house. I could not have time traveled in that." And so I went to go pick up the senior citizen I dropped off at the local lunchery there. And I said, "Anything different?" He goes, "I sat down, I ordered my meal, I'm sitting there eating, I look at the clock and realize it's 12:30, and he goes, "We just left." and and that week, Miles Johnston, on his way to go meet with Bob and meet with James Casbolt, also ended up on a different road, on a different highway. And I went, "Miles, what did they do to us this week?" Because I just have fragments. So this kind of stuff happens in my world, or I go to help an elder. That's the reason I was here. See, the elders are some of the matriarchs of these different tribes, like whether they're
Yeah.
Métis or in this area, the Sinaiacs, asked me to be here,
Mm.
right, to anchor this space for them. So you never know. So when you talk about your friends and where we're getting information, we come down here, and I'm lucky if they said we can't have it in there because too many people can pick it up and they can read. They can read it off the street light. They can read it off your lamppost these days, right? We know what's happening with, the ghost murmur and everything else these days, right? I'm into that tech, but there's a natural solution. And so I just wanted to share that was such a funny thing. But, when you get back into how we can help each other, and I think what you're doing with these conferences with, Billy, and like I said, I looked at Kathy O'Brien and Bryce's and all that. I've had people in Saskatoon come up to me at a jazz festival, and they said, "What are you looking at?" I said, "Oh, the chemicals coming down." They said, "You're in that David Icke stuff." I went, "Yeah, actually I am. I had every one of his books in my health center 30 years ago, and I met most of these people through, as you call, Freedom Lovers Canada, or we had something called with the injections, but National Citizens Inquiry is started by my cousin Sean Buckley. He's the leading, basically trying to protect things in natural law and health protection up here. But he started the National Inquiry because of the injections. So anything to do with SOGI, MAPS, children, pet, he did it all. He was the forerunner in that. And I want to give a shout out to him. But we had all the stuff for Canada and stuff that, I was part of in there to stop
Mm.
that in the background. So
Oh,
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
yeah, of course. One
Can I
thing,
screen share? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, one thing that I wanted to say was, I lived in my 20s and my early 20s in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Loved it.
Lovely.
Loved the people.
Close
Traveled
to the,
around a bit.
right at the
And,
hills, the foothills,
and
yeah, the Bow River.
yeah, and then I lived in America. And when I lived in America, I really noticed a lot of mocking of the Canadians. It
Yeah.
seemed to me like in England, there's Michael Salla. Oh,
Hi, girl.
we got a broadcast coming out on Thursday that
Send
we've
my
just, yeah,
regards.
we're excited. Anyway, um, he sorry, I forgot what I was going to say now. What was I saying?
Calgary, Calgary,
Calgary. Oh
and
yeah,
then the
that were
Americans
so
versus the
when
Canadians.
I was in America, I was like, wow, these a lot of Americans really make fun of Canadians. We're like mean, like bully, like mean girl kind of bullying stuff. And it's in
Yeah,
England, the Northerners will make fun of the Southerners. I'm a Southerner, they call us posh bastards or soft bastards. I'm like, come here and say that, but I'm just joking. But there's always this like you kind of and I was
you have some sort of
surprised.
right side of
I
me,
was
yeah.
surprised. I'm like, wow, if you guys actually spent time in Canada, you see how hilarious Canadians are. Canadians are so funny. And the country's so beautiful. And they're very sophisticated people. And they've got this extraordinary way of thinking because they're not as harmed in a lot of areas because there's so much expanse out in the boonies, as you say. So anyway, but I love both countries. I love America and I love Canada and very much. And, it's just interesting picking up the different ways that different cultures kind of make fun of each other. Whereas what we need to be doing is just really all pulling together, really all honoring each other, really tapping into the generational knowledge, the data banks of the elders, which
Yeah,
is what you're doing. And you mentioned
yeah,
that you're
I am.
looking out the back door of Hopi hieroglyphics right where you live on that land.
Yeah, I'll tell you all this stuff. I worked with also people like Renetta Jones, right, before she passed away as well, like James Rink. But in here, because a lot of us can decode what some of these are, right? And people always go, "Well, where's your treaty? Where's your piece of paper?" I said, "Do you know what the Cleopatra needle is? It's sitting right in the middle of Central Park in New York, guys. And then you want to know what the Rosetta Stone is and the Aztec Stone in Mexico and New Mexico. Those things are put in there, and they're put in. Actually, some of them are in secret languages. There's some Coptic Greek and some other stuff, but Chamatic, but they're put into languages. Those are actually the territorial marker stones. This is not Canada and the States. It was called the Americas Empire. And again, this would be what you call Bear Clan territory. I don't recognize Canada and the States, frankly. Even Alaska is actually part of Russia. They don't even realize, like when you know the nuances in here. So that's where I want to get back to some stuff. But what I thought I could do, just to screen share for just a second, because I know people will have a lot of questions and stuff like that. But I can show you something that will probably help drill things down if they want to get a hold, or I want to get them basically the self-help. because I'm all about people being self-empowered. This is not
Yeah.
about going to therapists and paying hundreds of thousands of dollars because it's informational technology.
Mm.
So what I thought I would just show, this is a very common way, and 80% are on here. I just wanted to show basically my Facebook, one of them. I have many, as you found out, on Facebook they haven't caught up to. Under my photo and my albums here is a whole amount of interesting stuff here. So there could be to do with child stuff or Sarah, the pole shift. Most people will want to know about their original lineages. How do you get your blood type? You get an Ellen card. That gets simple on Amazon. These are some of the documents that go back in here. So if you're into tuning forks or stuff I talked about that may have side effects, colonics, remote healing. As a nurse, I'm also a colon hydrotherapist. The best skill is water. Doing live blood cell. But a lot of the shows that I did, there's over 70 shows. So when I talked about ACIO and stuff like that, they're in here. If you don't know what a V steam is or a Yoni steam, they're in here. Bear Clan, tracing our lineages, biofield tuning. There was actually a show, a movie made about me in Calgary, actually. And it was shot at Bragg Creek, by the way, a lot of it. It was called The Future Shift. So David Wolf came to a lot of that. And that was all about, at the end days, there was going to be a pandemic. And that Klan Mother is going to take her clan and bring her little bear cubs up here and protect them in the forests up here.
Mm.
And this area in the psionic territory in the Kootenays is known since Lemuria and Mew that you can actually see on the original Paris Reese maps. That was a safe thing. In here, there's the Anastasia Syrians. These are your ley lines. I have lots of maps and bunkers most people have never ever seen as well. And then there's V steams, and these are some of the documents as we talked about genetics. These are some of the things in the proclamations I did to get rid of the Queen. And these are the star nations up here. These are constellar that go back to the original plates that we talked about in treaties that go back to 340 BCE. So this is all the Fae and all that stuff and the genetics and everything you want there. So if it's something that people are interested in, or want healing or where to look at stuff, this is a lot of where this healing is here for not only men, women, children, but for sexual abuse or military ritual stuff. So I've put this together for people rather than a website. This is just easier for me to go in here. And as we mentioned, even just about shows and broadcasts and stuff like that. Or, like I said, I'm happy to see anyone in here. But these are some of the ones we talked about from DUMS. I worked with Gene Decode and a few of these different people over the years too, navigating different areas in here. There's one we talked about, the Kathy O'Brien stuff, and different conspiracies and stuff. But these are just some of the shows and stuff. I did some amazing stuff with Robert Bauer, and I did some great stuff with one of Sabrina Wallace's friends. Is called Sherry, but Solana. She teaches free biofield, so I came in and they asked me for Sabrina's groups to teach how to do things naturally, like how to do steams, how to do herbs, how to measure your pH, things that people need to know. Also different things. You talked about the plates. Those are the plates, Danny, that the tribes were holding up that went to get rid
Where?
of the queen.
Where?
Right
Where's
here,
your mouse? Okay.
right there.
They're holding the
Breaking the,
plates.
they're holding the plates, and they're the plates. That was in front of, they marched them all the way from one nation to the other, 2014. So like I said, that's actually like, you want to talk about plates. Those were the original treaties. These are the ley lines, the sacred parts. When you talked about food and raw food, who I've worked with, like from David Avocado Wolf to Marcus Rothkrantz, Kara Brotman are amazing people. Dr. Sebi's kind of stuff. There's Dr. Robert Morse. Holistic nutrition and also holistic dentistry is very important. So teaching people to get, neodymium magnets on vials. And there's me with Dr. Robert Young on several things. And again, sacred sites, working with different whistleblowers. There's one of my setups here.
Mm.
Right? Doing biofeedback off a phone, anyone, and making their homeopathics at the same time. And there's when we were working with the vials. These are some of the elders here to stop the treaties for the clear cutting, the waters. This is how you professionally go in and look after things that we were doing with years ago. There's Miles, a bunch of stuff I've done over there. So
Yeah.
if this is something, I've seen things drained overnight, by the way. They drained our entire South Saskatchewan River to clean the dumps one
Oh
day.
my God. Oh my God.
I have got so much stuff. Tony
I know.
Pancharescu.
I can
There we
see
go.
that. All right, so let's go back up and just show your name again. I will
Oh,
say that your photo, I would change that because that picture is not flattering of you. You're much prettier than that
thank you.
photograph. Yeah, I don't know. I don't recognize that woman, and it doesn't look like you.
Really? That one?
You're much no younger and prettier. Like in,
We'll take you.
yeah, I would ditch that, my love. And
Okay,
and us
I will.
girls, we should tell each other that. We're being kind. It's like I wish more women, if they can, grow your hair long. Why would you
Yeah,
have to cut?
it's like,
Do you know what I
not
mean?
good.
Most people, most women look prettier with longer hair. And that's a fact across the spectrum, but some have got it. Oh no, they say after 40 you should cut your hair. Who? And let's ignore them. You know what I mean? It really does bother me, that people listen
There's
to
a sacred
like
thing
don't
about, the whole thing
it
about the tribes never
my
cut their
point.
hair, right?
My
They
point.
did.
Doesn't matter what color it is. And even if you throw in like hair extensions, I don't.
Yeah,
But I would if if I had very thin hair or something, and just women to just make the most of our beauty, and be proud of our beauty. And
well,
if like I said to you, that picture there, and I hope I wasn't being rude or insulting, but and I'm
no,
honest,
I appreciate it.
yeah, but because you're much better looking than that, you know what I mean? Because I saw it and I didn't recognize you, so I moved on. So I'd watched your videos, some of your videos, bits and pieces, getting ready for our interview. Then I saw
Right.
that image. I thought, oh, that's not her, and I went over it. So, and it
I'll
was
change
you.
it today, Danny.
Get it done, my girl. Get it done. Get it done. Brilliant. Okay, just want to touch quickly back on the Q552 military base, which is the
Sure.
Canadian Area 51, which is in Nelson.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it looks like? Have you been inside there? Or anything else that you want to share about that base?
Basically, in that area, I haven't been in it myself. However, I've had friends one to one that have. So I've known about three, four people directly that have been underground. And they've been in many grounds because they're part of stuff. And this is they're actually active. They're not inactive for vets. So they're not going to come forward because that would violate a constitution of their NDA, and they don't want to be like executed for court martialing. But there have been people outside of like you and I both, like I said, we know James Rake, we know James Casbolt,
JP.
all those kind of people. Yeah, all those people have said that. But I actually do have people that are active in the military that are on operations right now and have been in these several times. So one of the things in there, and they've always disclosed to me, but when you go into Nelson and you can actually look at the testimony that these guys have given on the basis project, because it is fascinating. I've been to Nelson. I was just down there a couple weeks ago. You can see the statues. You can see it's definitely a Tartarian mud flood city. There are people, actually I'll add a few more. I've known people that have actually gone into some of the entrances. There's some bunker entrances. I have a list of Canadian bunkers, and anyone can actually Google that. There was over 2,000 bunkers in Canada during World War II. They call them Diefenbaker. So the Prime Minister Diefenbaker put a whole bunch of stuff, and that was verified to me verbally by the former Minister of Defense, who gave all the testimony at the disclosure with Stephen Greer in front of the U.S. Congress, was the former Minister of Defense, Paul Hellyer. So I spent time with him, and he asked for my Klan Mother seal, and he said in front of everyone at Calgary at the conference, he says, she's going to be our one ray of hope.
Uh,
And he said, can I have your thing? And he gave me this big hug. He's like massive. He's like a bear, right? And it's amazing. So they verified as well what they were doing from their point of view, making the, like the Grenada Treaty and all those sort of things with these, different races and stuff. And apparently, when I talked to Sergeant Patty Broussard way back when I was doing Project Ascension in 2016, Patty had disclosed basically that there were 20 some races that Gaia had made treaties with, and about another 20 that gate crashed here. So to me, it's all their fault. And it needs to be put back together, just like in the movie you see. Actually, Jupiter Ascending is an excellent depiction of what the Klan Mothers are. So Jupiter would be the Klan Mother. It's about the lineage, right, and how we do things at that level. Avatar would be another one, because it's showing everything in there. The Book of Nave, they talk about Project Pegasus. Everything is in there, So I think it's really important. That's been the noticing to the public. So I have seen the statues myself, and I took a friend for the first time we had ever gone down to Nelson together, and I'm pointing out not just the gargoyles. Well, this is an entrance by this hotel, and this is what they're doing at the airport, and they have kind of like a Bohemian Grove up here. It's about an hour south. It's called Shambhala, and I also know that these things are used nefariously, like Bohemian Grove, right? But people come in, they think it's these trance raves, rainbow things. and they use a lot of it for biological warfare testing, hybridization. I've had people, actually, when David Wolf was here, it was kind of funny. Um, we were doing some teaching up there, and I was staying at a friend's, and right after I left and did some biofeedback, she went outside, and there were four men in black, like balaclavas and everything else, but, looked like ninjas. And she was like, "Don't hurt me, I'm a peaceful person, please." And they said, "Maybe we're here for you, not after you." And one of the guys like disrobed. So we have lots of military stuff. Like I said, 2 days ago, I just talked to the guy today, because we're getting people that 8-foot blue beans, a lot more Sasquatch things are being seen in the area. We've got police, like undisclosed SUVs all over here, and I just hear it's nuts what's going on. But I know that they're doing the preparation for one pole shift, and you got to remember this area, they were going to push them all up anyway. So when they started cleansing some of these dumps down in the States, like California and the different things, and the ocean ones, right? Because I'm really monitoring right now, like with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and other people, Mr. MB333 and all those people, and Dane Wigington. We've got a Cascadia happening here. We've got that huge volcano underneath Crescent, just outside of California and Oregon. And we are feeling all these shakes, rattle, and rows here. So it's coming up the fracture lines too. And as they take out some of these bases here, that's where you're getting your, fires and direct energy weapons. So all around Nelson, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like we had something like 18 direct energy lightning hits, that type of thing. So people need to be cognizant. There's a few, like you said, there's only a few of us that really know what's going on. And it's really important, I think, with what's coming on. They're preparing. We need to be prepared. And so part of it is I'm teaching like gardening, permaculture, how to keep clean, find a spring.org. These are the important things people need to know. Having all your essential oils, your herbs.
Yeah.
The biofeedback allows me so that, Danny, I don't run government ID because I'm not a Canadian. That includes driver's license, taxes, but it also includes health cards. And when I can do 40,000 tests that all the hospital and every naturopath can do just about, and go and become a herbologist and aromatherapist and traditional Chinese medicine and a chiropractor, plus the integrative MD
so
stuff.
much information. So much information.
Why do I need
wow.
that? Why do we need it? We can all do it ourselves.
Exactly.
And be sustainable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's what
I'm
I
getting
do. So
overstimulated here. There's just so much information. It's so much information coming out of you, girl. It's crazy good. And I'm so pleased to bring you on. I'm so happy that you said yes. I saw you out there in the field, as you know, and I approached you. Uh, did you hear my crow? It
What was that?
was my crow. I have
You have a
never
crow?
heard him so loud. Yes.
Are you
Yeah.
serious?
That is the no, I know they.
I've been having birds. Okay, so this is. Can you hear mine out here?
Yeah, I did. I just heard yours crowing too. Yeah. Yeah, they were responding to each other. I got goosebumps now, girl. Okay, I
Right.
cannot take any more input, my love. We're going to bring this to a close because I know you can just keep going and bring in brilliant, amazing information. My brain can't take it. There is so many places that you've shared now that people can go and
Yeah.
look at your work and take it apart. For me, you've brought brand new information. I'm so grateful to you. I knew nothing of the Q552 base in Nelson, and some of the beautiful tribal gatherings that you mentioned.
Yeah.
In particular, I didn't know how long you'd been out in the field. Many, many years, way before most people, or the COVID pop-ups, as I call them. My battery is about to run out, and it is so funny because it tells me that when it's fully charged, it goes for at least 3 hours. I'm never getting an Apple again, ever. Rubbish. I don't care.
Really?
I'll say my truth. Yeah. Anyway, tell us again how we can get hold of you before we bring this beautiful broadcast to a close.
Okay. So I'm on a lot of the social media. You'll see on Facebook. I'm on X, Twitter. I'm on social, True Social, which I hardly go to. MeWe, LinkedIn is my professional, but I'm also on Telegram. And so the actual email that I have that's easiest for most people is Klan Mother with a K. So KLAN Mother 13 at Gmail. If you hate Gmail, Then I have a KALM, so I'm the calm.
Right there.
13 before the
Oh,
storm at Proton Meal. And then one of the things in here, will go below your thing and I'll maybe give you a couple links if people want to do this, if they want to have a free session or try any of this stuff out for themselves. And
totally.
that's actually what you're doing. So I'm just going to leave you guys with some of those beautiful tones and frequencies, or if you want to have, I can do all the energy works and stuff too, but I think this is kind of the fun stuff. This is where, as women, we can give each other facials, and reflexology and oils and share incredible recipes and stuff like that. So, those are the best ways to get a hold of me, and we can have a fun time or sound bath. Or I'm giving you essential oils here too through all this. This is all the essential oils and the herbs and our local foraging
Beautiful.
medicines and from our sacred site. So I'm giving our medicines and sharing them with you. So thank
Thank
you so much.
you.
So that's the best way. Oh, I'm just going to say too, I've got a YouTube if people want, and a Rumble, for things in there. So I will be looking at, and I'm looking forward to, meeting people. If they just have a question, even if it's silly, if you want to know what a V-steam is, or we can actually take a picture of you and see what your, best herb or your best oil or are your middles working or something like that. I like doing it. It's like a mood ring. Let's put some
Love it.
energy in.
Love it.
So thank you so much, Danny. It's been an absolute great pleasure. Like I said, I'm so honored. I've been watching what you're doing, and I would love to see if we could put some sort of a round table together. I
Yeah,
think we could do some
I'm
amazing
open.
stuff.
I'm just blown away by you. I'm like, I hit overwhelm. I'm like, this woman is just, charging me up on so many different levels of like the information is just like, wow. It's amazing that you have an ability to hold such space, but you clearly do. And I'm so grateful that I reached out to you, that you accepted my invitation, and now you're here on my beautiful channel with a beautiful audience. They're so clever, intelligent,
Yes.
hungry, brilliant, equally as clever as either one of us sitting here with their own beautiful gifts to bring. So thank you, Karen, very much.
Thank you.
And to
Spasibo.
and to the lovely audience, don't forget, Karen has made you very sweet offers to reach out to her for free or book a session or go look at her multi-stacked, just her Facebook alone. I'll put all the details underneath this broadcast and send my love to everyone watching and especially to you, Karen. I'm so grateful to you. Until next time, guys, take care. See you soon. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Danny. Oh, God, it's amazing.